First player to do it. But Calvin Johnson would have done it in 17 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm only going to be impressed if he does it in 16.
Yeah, if he does it in 17, just a garbage season.
Yeah, terrible.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Stokastic.com, NFL, not Showdown live before lock, 2-game Monday Night Football live before lock. It's a little treat we got for tonight. Not exactly the best of games, but who cares? None of that matters. They got big contests. We got football, both of which are kicking off at 8:15 Eastern, and we're here to break it all down. Hopefully get you set up to win some money today. I hope to do the same myself, and I assume my friend Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS on the Twitters does as well. What's up, brother? It's been a little while since I was on this show.
I have not seen you since you became a two-time father. How is life with two young children?
I'm alive.
You're alive. All right, that's good. Same. Same. Nothing's changed. We're both still alive.
Yeah, man. No, it's all right. It's okay. You know, it's good. Look, it's the lack of sleep is what kills you. You know what I mean?
I can imagine it's pretty rough. Aton was speculating before you went on leave because you were saying like, oh, I'm just going to take 1 week of paternity leave and then I'll be right back. And Aton was like, there is no way that's going to happen. You did. You have kind of like slowly, gently returned.
The only thing I did was take these night shows off, and that was to help my wife out with the kids at night, not because of me. I hit up Greg on day 6.
But that was Aton's point, to be fair.
And said, I'll come back tomorrow. I don't think I have it nearly as bad as Aton because I'm getting like 7 hours of sleep, but broken up sleep. So that's the problem. It's not the same sleep, but it's still sleep.
Right.
So I would say Aton was wrong, really.
I mean, you could make that argument. I think I would, if I were the judge, I think I would say Aton was. Actually, I don't know. That's a fair point because you did come back. Like you weren't still on paternity leave. You were back working within a week. You just were not, your full workload.
Yeah, and again, that was only to help my wife out. Dude, if it were up to me.
But that was Aton's point, was that your wife is going to be there with 2 kids. You're going to need to help out. It's going to be tough for you to take your whole.
I only took 5 days off for the first one. So I was chomping at the bit.
You're a madman.
No, just trust me, dude. It's easier working than dealing with a newborn.
I believe that. I believe that.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Get me out of there. Happy you guys are with us. I'm glad to be back on this show. I'm glad it's back for a 2-gamer. I love this stuff. Lavi, is there any way to see top single game and showdown plays tool for which game? I don't know. I think he said green. Mike, you could throw that on the screen. Why not? It's one of our premium subs in the Discord that asked. Well, if they're premium sub in the Discord, why not just pull it up? Unless they're a linger, unless they're a hanger on that hasn't been booted yet. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Do you get Discord for like if you just sign up for the lineup generator? I don't know how all of our packages work.
That is actually a good point. Yeah. Anyway, throw it up on the screen. He's in our Discord. Who cares? Hey, one thing before we get started. We got extra time today. Take a single second. Neil, the people atone for their sins. What do you think? 500 today?
Not a chance. 2-game slate. Everybody focus on their lineups. They're not going to come and hit the like button for us when they're trying to get their lineups in for a 2-game slate. I'd be happy if we hit 200.
Hit that thumbs up. Put this man to shame. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate your guys' support in advance. We'll lock it up. We'll dial that in. Yeah, we'll make it happen. Anyway, I feel like since it's live before lock, normally if this were a deeper dive when we had live before lock after, I'd say we go game by game and then they could go position by position. Let's go position by position here. Started off with the quarterbacks. Glad you guys are here. First off, quarterback position, there's not that much. Now, there's Tua Tagovailoa, there's Jordan Love, and then it falls off a cliff. You've got Will Levis, you got Tommy DeVito. The problem that I run into is if you're trying to be different, Neil, and you're trying to find leverage in spots, do we really want to do it when Will Levis is only $2,000 cheaper than Tua? Like the price breaks here don't seem to be large enough. Even honestly, the price break between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Matt and I talked about it this morning. If you're talking about leverage, sure, but the projection difference is massive. And Tyreek Hill, Matt said it and he was right. Tyreek Hill should be 11,000. Jalen Waddle should be like 6,200. So if we're referring that back to quarterbacks, how do you kind of come to terms with these salaries with two of these guys in Levis and DeVito being backup, one a rookie quarterback that got thrust into action, and DeVito that was the third stringer before the 1 and 2s went down in New York?
Yeah, I mean it is a rough spot here. I sort of like Will Levis, and I'm just looking at our tools. Honestly, we have not a ton of leverage on any of these quarterbacks in terms of like where we have them owned relative to their odds of being optimal. We do actually have a little bit of positive leverage on Will Levis. So I think that's the one. If I'm going to one of the cheaper quarterbacks, I'd probably go to Levis over Tommy DeVito. The Packers have also been surprisingly good against wide receivers, against quarterbacks in recent games, even with Jair Alexander out. So I don't think I'm going to Tommy DeVito. If I do, it's not going to be a ton. We've got a super chat about Will Levis. That's probably why I'm directly going to the Will Levis is because of that super chat. I do think that Will Levis is viable on this slate. Yes, I agree. $2,000 is not a big enough difference between Will Levis and Tua Tagovailoa, but on a 2-game slate, like you don't. You got to find ways to get different. And one way to get different really easily is to play a 10% owned Will Levis. And he is an athletic guy. It's not the worst spot in the world against Miami. They should be having to throw a good amount. So I think that there are ways for Will Levis to get there. We saw the magic in his first start, and he's kind of fallen off a cliff since then. He hasn't really done much of anything since then, but we've at least seen it. We saw the game where he threw for 4 touchdowns against Atlanta. This is a game where he's going to be needing to throw throughout the game. Maybe he does. Like we know that he has the ability to run, even though he hasn't shown it yet in the NFL. Maybe this is the game he's trying to show off in prime time. Maybe he uses his legs a little bit more. I think you can make a case for Will Levis as a decent leverage play. But obviously, like it is pretty clear that the two best quarterbacks, like from a projection point per dollar standpoint, are going to be Tua and Jordan Love. Tua stands out like a sore thumb. It's a great spot against the Titans. They are a pass funnel defense, and this is like the most electric passing game in the NFL. So everybody's going to gravitate right toward the Miami Dolphins stacks. That makes a ton of sense to me. But there is a $2,000 price difference between Tua and Will Levis. There is a $1,300 price difference between Tua and Jordan Love. I think you can certainly make a case for. I mean, you can also make a case for Tommy DeVito. He has shown it against the Commanders. He had a pretty good game. He is the cheapest on the slate. I don't think that I'm going to go there much, if at all. But you can make the case for it. He actually projects better than Will Levis. So maybe I'm wrong in wanting to play Will Levis ahead of Tommy DeVito here. But to me, it is, if I'm playing anything small field, cashy, I'm going straight to Tua. I think that in tournaments, though, I don't mind playing some Jordan Love and Will Levis. I think they make a lot of sense in these matchups. You are on mute.
One of the problems that I have with somebody like Tommy DeVito, I don't know if I need it. I guess that's the only thing I keep coming back to is that you can build. There's Dontavian Wicks, there's Jalen Hyatt, there's Wan'Dale Robinson. Every tight end is $3,100 or cheaper. You can get a defense at 34, 2,800. Most expensive running back is 7,100. Like, do I need to sacrifice talent at that position? If you're doing so, yeah, sure, you could still max out the 50K cap, right? I'm sure you can. I haven't built anything with Tommy DeVito. I'm sure you can, but is it like, what are you getting to in these DeVito lineups?
Yeah, and that's the reason that I'm not really interested in playing DeVito. I got to a couple in my first run that I'm not sure if I'm going to completely eliminate them. But yeah, I have some, they're just full on Packers and Miami stacks in general. I have a Tommy DeVito lineup that has 5 Miami players in that Tommy DeVito lineup. So it has all of the Miami stack other than Tommy DeVito. It has both Mostert and Achane. It has Tyreek, it has Waddle, and it has Braxton Berrios in the lineup. Kind of an interesting one. I'm also seeing that it does not have a single uh, skill player from the Giants, so I must have set up my rules wrong for this one because I should be forcing. I thought I forced at least a running back with Tommy DeVito. That is, I think you can sort of make an interesting case for Tommy DeVito. Just pair him with Saquon, no other pass catchers. It's a way to get really unique really quickly. But I hear what you're saying. I kind of agree with you, which is why I'm not really getting to DeVito. He looks okay in our tools. We have him at 10.5% ownership, basically neutral, 10.5% ownership, 10.4% chance of being optimal. So I guess he gets their 10% in our sims, and our sims are smarter than either of us. So that's, I guess that is the case to be made for Tommy DeVito is, yeah, according to our sims, occasionally he is going to be the quarterback that you need, and it's probably because of the price point, because you are getting to lineups where you're using the full salary that you can't get with any of the other quarterbacks. I'm probably not going to go there a ton though. I feel like I think I've been tricked a little bit by Will Levis coming out against Atlanta in that first game and throwing for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns. Because in my mind, I still can't help the thought of like, man, he's shown a wide range of outcomes. When really it's like he's had one good game. It happened to be his first game, and that one's sticking him to mind. And I'm kind of forgetting about the 5 since then, where he has 1 2 touchdown game, but he hasn't
Yeah.
really shown much on the ground. Hasn't really done much through the air. It's just those first 3 games. So he had that one great game to start. Then he has 2 games back to back where he had 39 passing attempts against Pittsburgh and Tampa. So there's a part of me that's just like, well, if they're going to let him throw it, but they have come down a bit since then. The past 3, it's been 17, 28, 33 pass attempts. He has only 1 multi-touchdown. He only has 3 touchdowns in the past 5 games. So it goes to show you that maybe I'm overrating his range of outcomes because of that first game against Atlanta, but just the fact that he is a rookie and he has shown it to us at least once. I don't know. And he seems, he seems to have some rushing upside based on his college stats. I'm maybe wish casting a little bit, but I think I still feel like he has that upside a little bit. Whereas Tommy DeVito, I guess he's shown it too. So maybe I'm just completely wrong in thinking that Will Levis has the higher upside. He also is obviously has the higher draft capital, came in with higher pedigree than Tommy DeVito. But if I'm playing one of them, for me, it would be Will Levis over Tommy DeVito.
How much of Tua are you getting to? Also, how comfortable are you having like a Tua lineup with both running backs and Tyreek Hill? Because quite frankly, I have no issues with just full out Miami onslaught on a night like tonight. There's enough value out there. Look, I get that. I get that it might not look super pretty, but there is value out there. On a lot of times, it's funny. Like a lot of times on a slate like tonight, you're hoping to pull like a $4,500 guy or a 3K guy, but the 3K guy plays virtually no snaps and he's not very involved. And you're hoping for 2 targets, maybe a deep ball. Jalen Hyatt's been more involved. It's Tommy DeVito throwing him the football. That's not going to instill much confidence in anybody. But Dontavian Wicks, another guy, sub 4K without Christian Watson. He was already playing 60% of snaps in the first 3 games that Watson missed this season. And now they're going up against the Giants. And those are just a few options, just to name a couple. And then again, you get into the tight end position. There's no punting tight end in getting away from the expensive options. There's just punting tight end because there's nothing else there.
Yeah, that's I mean, we'll talk about tight ends a little bit more, but that is a valid thing. Like on a 2 game slate, I think it's totally valid to, if you want to go to a $2,500 tight end and just hope that Chigakonkwo and Tucker Kraft don't, and Daniel Bellinger don't do anything, and you can, get a benefit just from having the $2,500 tight end. I think that is a valid thing to do on a slate like this. But we can talk about those tight ends a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it was a long way of rambling and asking you, how comfortable are you with full team onslaughts today, even if it's not just Miami? Maybe it's like a full Green Bay, or it's Tua Tagovailoa, but then you've got 3 or 4 Green Bay skill players. Like, where do you draw the line on these type of, might seem like negative correlation in a lot of spots, but maybe on a 2-game slate, you're less worried about it?
Yeah, I'm definitely less worried about it. I'm playing up to 6 from a single team. We've seen that win. We've seen games. A couple of years ago, we saw somebody take down, I believe it was a Millie Maker, with 6 players from the same team. Had the defense, had the quarterback, had the full stack with the defense. It's one of those things that I tend to not want to do that. And on a main slate, I limit myself to, I think, 4 players typically from the same team. On this slate, I am allowing up to 6 from the same team. I'm totally comfortable with it. That is one way to get unique while playing players everybody else is playing. You don't even need to get unique with the individual players. That's a way to get unique just by the build. People aren't going to be doing a ton of 6 players from the same team. So I think that is totally viable to play 6 players from the same team. And you can play Tua with both quarterbacks, with Waddle, with Hill, just go the full on. And that's one way to get unique while playing all of those Miami guys that everybody else is playing too, and maybe throw the defense in there as well. You can play, 6 players from Miami that none of them are super contrarian. They all project pretty well, and not many people are going to have that combo. So yeah, I have no issue playing a full-on onslaught. You can do the same thing with the Packers. I think those are the only 2 teams that I would full-on onslaught, the Dolphins and the Packers, because I think that they're the only 2 that have like the ability to potentially support 6 players. I don't think I would do it with Tennessee or with the Giants, but those 2 I think is totally viable.
Yeah, even doing it with the Giants just feels counterintuitive anyway, because
yeah, they don't have 6 players that you want to play, I don't think.
Right. If you were to do that with the Giants, you could play every other expensive player and probably still not fill the salary.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just not going to, it's going to project really poorly if you play 6 players from the Giants, whereas you can play 6 players from Miami and those players are going to project really well. So I think it's a little bit more viable.
And by the way, I'm not saying that you want to fill the cap. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know if you could, if you wanted to.
Right, exactly. If you play 6 players from the Giants, like just fill in the most expensive players elsewhere. Yeah, I have not tried this, but maybe you couldn't. I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. So running backs. Let's talk about running backs here for a moment. And by the way, we're at 213 likes, Neil. We have 1,400 people watching with us. My guess, no, we're at 254. We're more than halfway there. This is easy work right here. Stay pessimistic, my friend.
We'll see. We'll see, Laffy.
Brandon Wagner. This slate is a super chat. This slate's got Neil's name all over it. Can't decide if I want to make 20 Love lineups or 10-10 Tua Love in DK 20 max. Thoughts on either strategy? I don't see why you'd need to go 20 Jordan Love lineups personally. I would be perfectly fine with me. I know you mentioned Neil, but I would be fine with 10 and 10 for sure.
Yeah, I would be fine. Honestly, it's a risk tolerance question more than anything else. If you want to put all of your money for the night on Jordan Love, I think that is totally fine. If you want to just like cheer for Jordan Love, have that be your night, but you are risking losing it all because a lot of people are going to play Tua, and the most likely outcome here is that Tua outscores every other quarterback on the slate by a good amount. And he's only 1,300 more expensive than Jordan Love. So it is a big risk if you fully fade Tua and just go to 100% Jordan Love. But if that's the way you want to play it, just know that you might lose all your money. You can still make great lineups. You can still make 20 great lineups that are all Jordan Love lineups if that's the way you want to play it.
But that's not something you're doing today.
It's not something I'm doing. I'm playing. I'm setting my cap at 40%. So I think you started to ask me how much of Tua I'm getting to. I am going to be under the field because I'm setting my cap on quarterbacks at 40% tonight, just because I want to spread out between those 3, Tua, Love, and Will Levis a little bit. I tend to be a little bit.
Go ahead.
I tend to be in some ways I take on a lot of risks because I play a lot of weird plays, but I also spread out what I do more than I think most people do in general. So like on a 2-game slate, I'm spreading out my risk by playing at least three different quarterbacks of the 4 who we could play tonight. A lot of people, we've seen, I know Megan Joy, a professional DFS player, sometimes on a main slate has played 150 of the same quarterback. I've seen Whistles Go Woo do the same thing. So there are a lot of different ways to play. It's all about your risk tolerance. And for me, I like to spread it out a little bit.
Yeah. So you're getting risky, but not by consolidating everything to like one player or one team, but just spreading it as much as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, totally get it. Now, at running back, you have a couple things that to me make this slate really, really fascinating. One, well, you have no Aaron Jones, but we haven't had Aaron Jones. So that means that A.J. Dillon is going to be definitely a fixture in many people's lineups, but also the Devon Achane. And by the way, I heard Scott Barrett on your show continuously refer to him as Achane. And all of the bones that you've had to pick with me for saying that I refuse to revert back to Achane after weeks of him being okay with Achane, and you not one single time corrected him on that show. I listen, and that's a real issue, man.
See, I corrected him by then saying the name correctly after. I didn't
No.
specifically call him out and say you said that wrong. But then I went and said, "Oh no, yeah, Devin A. Chain is a great play." So I corrected him in my own subtle way. No, I did not remember that he mispronounced name. I didn't notice, to be honest.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
But
How
he
could
also didn't say I refuse. That's the difference. It was I was laughing at you because you say I refuse to make this change. It's not like, oh, it's going to take me a little while to get used to adjust. And it's like, no, I'm not willing to say this guy's last name correctly.
tomato, tomato, man? It's all the same to me.
All right,
Anyway,
fair enough.
I'm. How comfortable are you playing A Chan and Raheem Mostert in the same lineup today? Because Matt and I this morning kind of agreed that this could be a real 50-50 split if it doesn't get out of hand too early.
Yeah, I listened to your show and I was ready to be the person to bring it up, but you guys talked about how HM was mostly involved in the second half last week. Like it was Mostert in the first half until the game got out of hand, and then they were like, all right, we're just going to give it to HM going forward. Like he was involved some in the first half. There is still some possibility in my mind that Raheem Mostert is just the starting running back whenever games are competitive for the Dolphins. So I really honestly, I like both of them. I like Mostert better than Achane just because we have him at significantly lower ownership, like almost half the ownership of Achane. And I think there is a possibility that he's still the starting running back. Now, Achane is clearly talented. Maybe it really is a true 50-50 split. But yeah, to answer your original question of like, just am I willing to play them together? Absolutely. It's a 2-game slate. We've seen these guys put up 99 DraftKings fantasy points together early on against the Broncos this season. I'm not expecting that, but if they put up 35 fantasy points together on a 2-game slate, that might be what you want. That might be the combo that you want. So yeah, I'm definitely willing to play Achane and Mostert together. And even if they do the same split they did last week, where Mostert was the guy early on, Achane was the guy for the second half. They both, I mean, Mostert didn't really get there. He scored a touchdown. I think he put up like 12 fantasy points, something like that, which still might be enough on a 2-game slate. Probably you need more than that. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, I'm absolutely willing to play both of them together. If I'm making one lineup and I just want to play one of them, to me, I would prefer it to be Mostert. Just because I do think that he is going to go under-owned relative to HN, and I think that he's going to be the starter. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong about that. Well, it's kind of a hard situation to read sometimes with the Dolphins, who they like actually want to play because they've had so many wonky games this season. But with the lower ownership, I prefer lower ownership and lower price tag. I prefer Mostert.
It's been a tough team to figure out from week to week. But the good thing is on a slate like today, it might not matter. HN could give you 24, Mostert could give you 15, and it still gets there. I think that's entirely possible. Like, look, Saquon Barkley's a good player. He's going to get most of the work, almost all of it, essentially. He'll be on the field for upwards of 90% of snaps. I like Saquon Barkley, clearly. But at the same time, it's not a good offense. They have a considerably lower implied total than Miami. They're 6-point dogs at home. Every game that they've played at home this year has gone under. I mean, they lost 40-0 to Dallas and that game went under. They have not played to the over in a single game at home this year. And many of them have been super, super low scoring. A trend like that is kind of whatever. But my point is, it's not a good offense. Yes, Tommy DeVito beat up that Washington Commanders secondary. You could do the same, Neil. Man, that's a really bad football team on defense. I know that they have some, like, I don't know if Quay Walker's in, I have to look, but Jair Alexander's still out. They got a couple guys banged up on defense. Still a pretty talented defense that can get a lot of pressure on a quarterback. So can they move the football? I don't know. Will they be able to run? I don't know. Is it possible that AJ Dillon just isn't that great either? Giants run defense hasn't been that terrible. I guess what I'm getting at is like there's ways that Henry could fail, obviously. There's ways that Dillon and Barkley could fail and not have huge games, which I think is why both you and me are saying, yeah, of course you could play those two guys together with a 30+ point total or whatever it is.
Yeah, honestly, if this was on the main slate, I might still say it was possible. Probably not. It'd be a little bit thin on the main slate, but on a 2-game slate, like you just don't really need that much from these guys to get it done. And if you want to fade Tyreek Hill, like it would make a lot of sense to play both running backs if you want to go the route of fading Tyreek Hill. Now we'll talk about the merits of potentially fading versus playing Tyreek Hill once we get to wide receivers. But I think that that is one way to just like, if you want to fade Tyreek Hill, just hope that they score all the touchdowns on the ground, pick up all the yards on the ground, and don't need Tyreek Hill to have a big game. So yeah, absolutely, it's viable to play them together. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Brad, we'll get into that question on Shepard when we get to wide receivers for sure. But Neil, I do want to ask you about a couple of these other running backs. Before we get to the kind of punt options here, spoiler alert, there are not many good ones at all. Before we get there, how are you approaching, if you were to just kind of rank these guys in the hierarchy of running backs today, be it, just game theory or how you're projecting them with Achane, Mostert, Henry, no Jones, so AJ Dillon, Saquon Barkley, those guys, basically Dillon and up, and then we can get a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at our tools, AJ Dillon is way too cheap at 5,300. We have him at 56% ownership, 68% chance of being optimal. So we have massive positive leverage on AJ Dillon. I'm going to have a good amount of AJ Dillon. I don't know that I'm going to be well above the field because we do still have the field at 56%, but just based on the tools, like we actually have him a little bit under on. I think that my favorite running back on the slate is probably Raheem Mostert, just because we have him at 25% ownership and he's shown how much upside he has several times. Yeah, I think after those Miami guys, I think it's probably AJ Dillon is the next best, just in terms of like point per dollar projection. He looks fantastic. It is about as good of a matchup as you can possibly ask for against the Giants. Saquon Barkley, I think, is probably the best pure runner on the slate. He's only $100 more expensive than Devin Achane. He's involved in the passing game and the running game, so hard not to have a lot of interest in Saquon Barkley. Derrick Henry, I'm struggling with what to do with Derrick Henry. He's a little bit cheaper. I almost want to, part of me wants to think like, okay, so we saw that Raheem Mostert is the guy for the Dolphins, or at least I think he was the guy in a competitive game. So part of me wants to say, like, if I play Mostert, play at least one of the Tennessee guys or bump to the Tennessee guys and hope that they can keep it close like you usually do with the quarterback in a weird way. So maybe Mostert and Henry together could make some sense. But yeah, I think I guess if you want me to rank all of the running backs, it would go Mostert for me first, Achane second, probably AJ Dillon third, Barkley fourth, Henry fifth. And then I do have some interest. I'm going to be playing a lot of the ugly running backs, the guys that people don't really want to play, like Tyjae Spears. I think that you can make a case. We saw Derrick Henry seemed to be concussed last week, at least took a nasty hit last week. Tyjae Spears, I like just because he is involved regardless. I think that Derrick Henry is going to be a full go here, so it's not a huge concern for me, but it's at least worth noting that he maybe is recovering from something. Tyjae Spears has taken 18 carries over the past 2 weeks. He has run routes on 51% of dropbacks, and I think that this is a game where they're going to be needing to throw. So I like Tyjae Spears just from the perspective of he is the receiving running back on the Titans in a game environment where we're expecting them to probably be getting behind the Dolphins pretty quickly. And we still have him at very low ownership. So I think I like Tyjae Spears the best of the low owned running backs. And then after that, I'm trying to decide, Lofty, what I want to do with Patrick Taylor and or Kenyon Drake. I think that I'm actually going to play some Kenyon Drake because he was called up from the practice squad. I think Patrick Taylor has been a little bit underwhelming in general. So I think maybe they called up Kenyon Drake with the expectation that they're actually going to use him. He's also the min price, so doesn't really need to do much to pay it off. I'm going to be sprinkling in both Kenyon Drake and Patrick Taylor. And also just for a like there is some contingency there with Kenyon Drake where obviously you get more run if there is an injury ahead of him, but also like in a blowout scenario, which is definitely not out of the question in this game. If the Packers get up by a lot, maybe they want to see whether Kenyon Drake still has some juice, whether he's somebody they want to bring into their rotation. So I think that there are ways for Kenyon Drake to get there at like no ownership. So I like him as like only either of them, Patrick Taylor or Kenyon Drake, I think are only viable for the largest field GPPs out there. I'm not going to play them in, a small field kind of contest, definitely not cashy type plays, but for a large field, I do think both of them are at least a little bit interesting. Okay, we just got 8 minutes ago, we got an update to the tool. So I'm going to update what I'm looking at now.
Metaphorical gun to the head. If you had to play one guy cheaper than AJ Dillon, one lineup, one guy, who would it be?
Ty Spears. I just think I really like the spot for him against Miami, where they're going to need to be they're going to need to be playing catch up, or at the very least putting up points in a hurry. So yeah, I think Ty Spears just gets there in a neutral game, or I shouldn't say gets there, has opportunities regularly, and I think that this could be increased opportunities in this matchup with Miami and Derrick Henry maybe recovering from something. I just think that there are a lot of paths for Ty Spears to get there.
I get it. I absolutely do. Um, I wish he wasn't kind of preemptively priced up with, the Derrick Henry stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I think that's pretty much it though for running backs.
Yeah, let me check. I mean, yeah, Matt Breida, if you want to go like the backup running back route,
I don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to Breida. I'm taking my shots on Spears and the Packers guys. I like them better because they're the guys who, if they get the opportunities, they are going to be in better spots against bad run defenses in general. So, or I mean, Ty Spears just has opportunities. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to Breida, but he's just the other one that I could mention is like, yeah, he's the backup. If something happens to Saquon, maybe he'll have some opportunities there. I don't think I'm going to Jeff Wilson. I've tried it several times before. I think at this point he's the third string running back. Probably won't see too many opportunities on a 2-game slate. Maybe like marginally in a 150 set, I would probably have some exposure to Jeff Wilson, but I'm not going to tonight.
All right. What is that? Packers are 16-0 during December since. That's interesting. Wait. 16-0. Huh. Is that
impressive?
Is that right?
I even had to look at the date.
Make sure
it wasn't old.
They were talking about that last week a good amount. Yeah.
So I guess last year week 18 would have been in January then.
Yeah. It was New Year's Day, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they lost to the Lions. Okay. All right, interesting. I mean, different quarterback, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about wide receivers. This is where it's about to get interesting. Before we do, though, if you're not at ownersbox.com yet, here is one way that you can get a $500 bonus, up to $500 sign-up bonus when you sign up. And two, they even sweeten the pot, some tickets. You get a Lightning Lineups ticket. Not only do you get that, but you also get a DFS contest, another $5 ticket, no matter how much you deposit. If you're not over there yet, you should be, because they overlay a lot. It's that I don't know a better or simpler way to put it. They overlay a lot right now. A lot of it's baked into what they're doing. You want people to sign up. You want people to play. Like tonight, the 20K stiff arm, still 25% to go. On the main slates, that's 20K up top. They aren't filling. I mean, pretty simplistic stuff. Also, super flex contests, which are highly important. You don't have to play a defense. You can play, like on a night like tonight, you could say, all right, I don't have to choose between Tua and Love. I can play both of them. Or you know what? Maybe I will free up some space and I'll go Tommy DeVito in the super flex and I'll stack him with Barkley and Jalen Hyatt or Wan'Dale Robinson, but still have Tua and Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane, something like that. It's awesome. It's a very cool format. We've had a lot of guys here watching the shows, subs to the channel, to the Sims tool, take down some big tournaments to 20K a couple of times just since they've signed up. And I figure for you guys, many of you I know are already on Owner's Box because we get questions about it all the time. By the way, link in the description and in the pinned comment or in the chat. Turn your ad blocker off. If you have ad blocker, it'll take you right there. You don't need a promo code. Just sign up, click it. The deposit bonus, the tickets, all of those are just through the link. You don't need a promo code. But anyway, Neil, I say we take a quick look at the Sims. Last time we did this on the show, a guy won the showdown contest from the parking lot sitting in his car. Of course you remember.
Yeah, it's pretty memorable thing when somebody just uses the lineup and takes a lot of money down. Yeah, let's give it out again. Let's give out the goods. No guarantees that it's going to win again. It's pretty unlikely that every single time, but you can see what looks good here.
Yeah, pull it up. Let's just see what the top lineups are on Owner's Box. Before you look, Neil, would you guess that we're going to have quarterbacks in all of the super flex spots?
On a 2-game slate, no, I would not guess so.
Okay. Well, let's see. First lineup, you got Tua, Devon Achane, Dillon, Tyreek Hill, Jaden Reed, Chig, Romeo Doubs, Tucker, Kraft, Tommy DeVito. All right, second one, you're right, though. It's a DeVito lineup with Hill and Waddle, Barkley. See, that's not all that crazy.
It's got Hill and Waddle and no Tua.
And no Tua, yep.
I can't read it. I'm trying to read the screen. I got to pull up my YouTube.
What you do is go to YouTube, maximize the YouTube screen.
Yeah.
Then Tua, Barkley, A-Chain, Hopkins, Jaden Reed, Chig, Dillon, Wicks, DeVito. So yeah, actually a decent amount of DeVito in the Superflex, but then I'm seeing, so the 5th ranked lineup as far as simmed ROI goes in the lineup simulator has Tua and Love. Last one I want to read because this is the 2 expensive quarterbacks. You have Tua and Love, then you have Barkley, HN, Hill, Wan'Dale Robinson, Chig, Wicks, Slayton, and Jordan Love. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. You do have to make some sacrifice. You can see there, if you want to play 2 quarterbacks, or the 2 best quarterbacks at least, you have to make some sacrifice. You got to play some players that maybe make you a little bit uncomfortable, but that's kind of what you need to do on a 2-game slate anyway. You got to get a little bit uncomfortable generally.
Yeah, you have to. You absolutely have to. Anyway, link in the description and chat if you're not on Owner's Bucks. Get in. 76% filled in the big one tonight. Some other ones yet to fill as well. Get the deposit bonus in those free tickets and start falling in love with the Superflex format. All right, wide receivers. How comfortable are you saying, well, you know what? I'm just going to go with Waddle over Hill in some of these lineups because it's a leverage play.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to do it all year. The play Waddle as leverage off Tyreek Hill thing
hasn't worked out that well for us.
It has not, and even the games that Waddle has worked out, like he's had a few big games. So has Hill. Like we have not really. Hill just gets there every single week. With that said, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to have plenty of lineups tonight that have Waddle and no Hill once again. It is tough, and I saw somebody in chat asking earlier how much Hill is too much Hill, and the answer is there is no limit to how much. Like you can play 100% Hill. There is nothing wrong. Even in a 20 max, if you want to play 100% Hill, I think the numbers will support it. Like I ran the lineup generator earlier, and I got to 100% Hill in my first 40 lineups I looked at in the lineup generator. Every single one of them had Tyreek Hill. Like there are plenty of ways to build great lineups with Tyreek Hill. With that said, I'm actually going to have more of Jalen Waddle than Tyreek Hill tonight. And I'm probably going to get bit by it. Like Tyreek Hill just gets there every week. I think they're trying to get him to 2,000 yards. And this is obviously a great spot to get him to 2,000 yards if they want to do that. But I am just going to hope that Miami scores in other ways. And maybe Tyreek Hill just puts up 18 fantasy points at 9,200. And we have enough other players who are cheaper put up 18 fantasy points where maybe a more balanced build works out. So the answer is there is no such thing as too much Tyreek Hill. There are a lot of different ways to play this slate, though. I think one of the leverage spots that I'm going to try to play is to fade Tyreek Hill in a lot of my lineups and just play the running backs, play Jalen Waddle instead of Hill.
I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
Matt and I had a long discussion this morning, and it's so tough because in my head, like the obvious answer is, yeah, well, that's what a leverage spot that is. But then I just keep coming back to the fact that they're way too close and they're so close in price, relatively speaking, right? Like as far as the production that we've seen thus far from one or the other. Jalen, would you be doing this on a main slate, or because it's a 2-game slate, you're okay saying, all right, DraftKings refuses to budge on this price point and Jalen Waddle's overpriced, but I'll do it anyway because it's a 2-gamer?
Yeah, I mean, I would do it on a main slate too. Like I think it's totally viable. It's the same kind of concept on a main slate where it's like, well, what if just Jalen Waddle breaks off a couple 80-yarders and Tyreek Hill just doesn't have those opportunities to put up a big score? It can certainly happen against this type of passing defense. So I think I would be willing to do it on a main slate too, but it is, given the ownership on a 2-game slate, and we've got Hill at like 85%, just that is a ton. That is so much ownership going to Tyreek Hill. Yeah, we actually have, okay. Our latest update, we have Hill at 83.7% ownership, 78.4% optimal. So we actually have negative leverage there on Tyreek Hill at 83.7% ownership. One thing that I try to factor in is, I've been intrigued by Sims for a long time now, and I have not heard this from anybody at our company. They may have figured out like the perfect way to account for injuries, like weird things happening. I've heard people at other sites, people who are do a lot of simming, talk about it is really difficult to account for things like injuries in the Sims. And I think that this is a spot where maybe we're underrepresenting the possibility of Tyreek Hill getting hurt, in the first half, and Jalen Waddle. Maybe I'm just trying to give myself reasons to play more Jalen Waddle than Tyreek Hill. I just see 84% ownership on Hill, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's going to most likely in a regular game, he's going to put up a lot of fantasy points, but I think his range of outcomes includes games where he puts up 16, 18 fantasy points, and that's not enough to get into the winning lineup. So I just think that there are ways that, yeah, he's almost certainly not going to fully disappoint. He's not going to put up a goose egg in this matchup. But I think there is the possibility that he puts up 18 fantasy points, and that's not good enough, and I'm going to benefit from not having him.
What about DeAndre Hopkins today? I mean, look, on one hand, it's Will Levis throwing him the football. Miami's defense has held opposing passers under 200 yards in 6 of their last 8, which is pretty crazy, right?
It is. It is pretty crazy.
To be fair, they faced a lot of bad teams and a lot of bad quarterbacks, right? Nick Lepre, our friend, Notorious Fantasy, earlier said, yeah, the Dolphins by 50. Probably. They're not playing a good team. But there is so that's the one side of it. Will Levis has a passing prop of 210.5. Over on Odd Shopper, we were showing the under as a very nice plus EV play today on FanDuel. But on the other hand, DeAndre Hopkins could have a 13 target game and no one would bat an eye.
Exactly. I mean, you just look at his past couple games, DeAndre Hopkins in weeks 12 and 13, he has 17 targets over the past 2 games. And yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to see, that's an average of 8.5. Wouldn't be surprising to see it go over by a few in a game where they're going to be trying to keep up with this Dolphins passing attack. So yeah, I really like DeAndre Hopkins tonight. I think that it's a great spot for him. Not the best matchup, but just from the perspective of Will Levis wants to target him. He's been targeted a ton in the games since Will Levis started playing. I think just all year he's been targeted a ton, and it's a spot where they're going to need to be passing a lot to try to keep up with the Dolphins. So yeah, I really like the spot for DeAndre Hopkins, even though it's not the best matchup as far as like the defense is actually pretty good. I still like the spot from just a volume perspective for DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm actually, and he looked good in the tools also. We've got him at 41% ownership, 43% chance of being optimal. The price tag 6,100 is totally fine on a 2-game slate. Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of Hopkins.
Is there anybody else up here because once we get to the cheap guys, this is where it starts to look very oddly enough appealing, just because it allows you to kind of do everything else. I think for a 2-game slate, we have plenty of value. Maybe not guys that you'd be loading up on a main slate, but I think some of them you would. Like, I think Wicks would still be, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, I think Wicks would still be a relatively popular play without Christian Watson against the Giants, even if we're on like a 10-game main slate.
I don't think that if it were a 10-game main slate, I don't think it would be. I mean, I guess you say relatively.
I think he'd be 10, 11% still.
Do you really? He only ran routes on 33% of dropbacks last week.
Yeah, because Watson played the whole game.
Yeah, but we still haven't projected for sub 8 fantasy points. So like that projection wouldn't get him into a ton of lineups. He would be getting over 5%, I think. I don't think he'd get to 10, 11, but we're kind of quibbling here. Like, we both agree he would get some ownership.
All I'm saying is let's put it this way. He wouldn't be unowned. So
no,
we do have a few guys that Wan'Dale Robinson would probably get like what, 3, 4, 5% as well. These aren't guys that would be getting blank. Put it that way. All I'm saying is there is some value. But before we get there, are there any other guys that are, in that range of DeAndre Hopkins, 5K guys that are interesting to you?
Oh, he's kind of in a tier by himself. We got Waddle at 7,500, Hopkins at 6,100, and then it drops all the way down to Romeo Doubs at 5,000. So we don't really have anybody at that range. But I do have interest in both, like all 3 of those Packers: Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. All pretty interesting here. I do think Jordan Love, he's been really good recently, which I hate to see as a Vikings fan. I loved it early in the year when we could just make fun of the Packers for finally not having a good quarterback. Suddenly he's looking pretty good recently.
On that one.
Yeah, and he's looking good. Great matchup with the Giants. We got no Christian Watson, so all these guys look like relative values. Romeo Dobbs at 5,000 seems fine. Jaden Reed, I think, is, they're kind of 1A, 1B as far as top receiver for the Packers go. So yeah, a lot of interest in all of Dobbs, Reed, Wicks. I think they're all going to be on the field a good amount and should see good opportunities in a great matchup here. So yeah, I like all of these guys at the ownership that they're getting. I mean, I think they're all getting reasonable ownership, I guess. And I should look at our top single game tool. No, it is the boom bust tool. It's just the boom bust go because it's
it's different.
We have Wicks going a little bit under owned, 28% ownership, 33% chance to be an optimal. Dobbs, 36% ownership, looks exactly right there. And then Jaden Reed, we actually have Jaden Reed over owned in the tools, 43% ownership, 34% chance to be an optimal. So he is the one that looks the worst in terms of our tools. I think that it's a little bit unclear, like exactly how much he is going to play with Christian Watson out, because I was actually sort of surprised to see how little Jaden Reed played last week. I think he only played like 50% of snaps. I looked at it recently, but over the past 2 games, he is at 60% rep participation over the past 2 games. So not the elite level of rep participation that I was kind of expecting, but he was also returning from a chest injury. So I think that may have played into it. I think with additional time to recover and with Christian Watson out, I think he's going to be right there with Romeo Dobbs, 75+% rep participation. That's kind of just speculation though. So I think all 3 of those Green Bay receivers are in play for sure. And I'm going to have, I think, a good amount of all of them.
I'll tell you something crazy just to get your thoughts on this. And if you guys are out there listening, this one definitely stood out to me earlier. I was doing a betting video just looking for touchdown props and, receiving props. So listen to this, Neil. On the season, right? Christian Watson, who has missed games, by the way, has been absolutely dominating red zone and end zone targets for Green Bay. He has 22 targets inside the red zone in 9 games, 15 end zone targets in 9 games as well. Yeah, right? Romeo Dobbs, though, 19 red zone targets, 12 end zone targets, 7 touchdowns on those 12 end zone targets. So if you remove Christian Watson from the equation and this team starts to drive downfield, very plausible that you see Romeo Dobbs getting a lot of that work in the end zone and the red zone. And Jaden Reed, 17 red zone targets, nothing to sneeze at either. But there's no question that those end zone targets for Dobbs, he has become one of Jordan Love's favorite guys. And with Christian Watson out, you have to think that more could get to him if they get inside the 20.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he is probably the wide receiver 1 on the Packers now. Great matchup. Yeah, the fact they're forcing it to him in the red zone, that all looks good. I like Romeo Dobbs quite a bit here.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the cheap guys, because like I said, I probably like Wicks a little bit more than you do. I don't know. I just think you're looking at a guy who has been very efficient with his limited opportunities. Now there's no Watson. It's not a bad matchup against the Giants, and he's 3,800, but also you could probably plug him in for like 65% of snaps today. We saw him averaging around 60 in weeks 1 through 3 without Watson. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he played even more than that today, even more than what he was playing in the first 3 weeks.
And he was also, I believe, so this is something that I wasn't even thinking about. I think he was recovering from an injury last week as well. So I said Reed
he missed a week. He missed week 12.
Yeah, so that is a good point. Like maybe, and with Watson being out, he is probably the wide receiver. I mean, he is the wide receiver 3 for this team. So maybe he actually does have more upside than I'm giving him credit for. But even, I mean, you say that you like him better than I do. I actually have more than what we have the field projected at of Dontavian Wicks right now. So I don't want to say like I don't have interest there. It's just I guess I wasn't thinking that the field is going to get there a ton on a main slate, but I do think that he looks good as just a relatively low owned option. It's not super low owned. He's still getting some ownership. But yeah, I think the upside is certainly there for a $3,800 Dontavian Wicks.
Who are your favorite cheap options? Because we talked about Wicks. Can we dig into the Giants a little bit? Because they might be a gross team, but there's not a single guy that has a target share north of 16% in the 3 games that Tommy DeVito started. He's spreading the ball around. You still have to think, though, that Hyatt, who, by the way, 37% of team air yards in those games, it's just unfortunate where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And then Wan'Dale Robinson, 36 air yards. So one guy could get you there if he catches a deep ball, which is who knows. And then the other is going to need to catch like 6 for 40 in Wan'Dale Robinson, hopefully get us 10. Both can get there in their own right. But then you have Slayton and Sterling Shepard, who's targeted a bunch per route run, but he's not on the field a lot. And Bellinger, how are you breaking down this Giants pass catchers?
Yeah, so Wan'Dale Robinson probably the best of the bunch just because of the volume that he sees, the route participation over, I guess just the last game. 76% route participation in the last game, 5 targets. We've seen him have games where he gets like double-digit targets, though. He's a guy who doesn't really need to even have a splash play to necessarily get there. He just gets peppered with targets some games. So I think Wan'Dale is probably the best of the group. Jalen Hyatt is a nice boom bust option, as you said, 120 air yards in just that last game. He was targeted 6 times, average 20 ADOT on those 6 targets. He ended up with 109 yards on 5 receptions. So hard not to have some interest in Wyatt as well. So those are the clear top 2 receivers for the Giants, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt. On a main slate, even like a 4 or 5 game slate, I probably wouldn't even consider any other receiver from the Giants. But because it is a 2-game slate, these guys become more interesting. Darius Slayton, 57.6% route participation in that last game. Only saw 2 targets, but the fact that he was out there running routes is at least promising. I'd say he's 3rd in the pecking order for me, and I don't think I'm going to any of the other receivers. Paris Campbell is out, but he only ran 4 routes their last game anyway, so it's not like he's leaving some big void there for that other receivers are going to fill. So for me, I think it's mostly just Wan'Dale, Jalen Hyatt, and Darius Slayton. If you want to take shots in a large field tournament on Sterling Shepard, that's totally fine. Isaiah Hodgins, that's fine. I don't think I'm getting to those guys, though, for my 21 lineups. I was done, and then I see that you had Jan muted and you were coughing, so I continued my sentence.
That was strong. I actually saw that. I was impressed by that. Thank you.
Yeah, I had to point out how professional I am.
It was seamless.
That.
I noticed. I actually looked over and I was like, did he do that on purpose, or did it just seem like he was done? Nice work.
Yeah, I want to cut anyway.
You would have cut? All right, good.
I would have let him do that in private.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Yeah. I started choking on my water over here. Tight ends, Neil?
Yeah, let's talk tight ends.
All right,
it's ugly.
By the way, you're right. We will not hit 500 likes. I have waved the white flag. We are at 374 with 15 minutes to go.
First time I've won one of these.
It's the first time you've gotten it right.
Yep. Really proud of myself.
People have let me down. We'll try again. Anyway. Tight ends, they're gross. There's not much to talk about. Here's the way I see it. Chigakonkwo is fine. Kraft, fine. You want to get to some Bellinger, fine. I don't know what you want to do with Durham Smythe and those guys, but I'm just, the way I'm looking at my tight end exposure, it's actually, personally for me, is mostly Chig and Kraft.
I think that is going to be kind of common. Like most people are going to go to those 2. They are like clearly the best on the slate. Just looking at projection, we have Chig projected the best, Kraft right behind him. So I think that's totally fine. I think that, to me, tight end is also sort of a place where you can get unique without taking on quite as much risk. Now, Chig does have 10 targets over the past 2 games, and Tucker Kraft also has a good amount of targets over those games. So there is not like no risk in going somewhere else at tight end, but on a 2-game slate, like, would we be shocked if no tight end gets to 5 fantasy points? I certainly would not be shocked by that. So I might get a little bit more different. I think I'm going to go to, I'm going to be, I think, underweight to the field on Chig just because we have so much ownership going there to Chig. I think I'm going to other places on the Titans. That's the one spot on the Titans that is fairly chalky. 56% ownership going to Chig. So I'm going to come in underweight to that. I'm still going to have some. Tucker Kraft, 47% ownership. I'm currently slightly above weight to the field on that. I don't know if I'll end up there. I think Daniel Bellinger is really interesting. We have him at, and actually let me see what our update says on Daniel Bellinger, because that might change things a little bit. We've had him at ownership in the teens. Okay, never mind. The ownership has come up quite a bit on Daniel Bellinger. We have him up to 26% now that we have him confirmed as in. We didn't have that earlier. So the ownership has come up there. All right. So actually looking at our updated tools, everything has changed since I was building lineups earlier. We have Chig down now at 43% ownership, Tucker Kraft down at 38, Daniel Bellinger at 26, Durham Smythe at 17. So it really has evened out a lot more than it was earlier in the day. At this kind of ownership, I think I'm going to be spread out. Honestly, I think that it's a spot where it's possible none of these guys get there. Now, I don't love any of the $2,500 options all that much either. Is the hard thing. Like Lawrence Cager, I kind of thought was going to be interesting, and then I look at what he did in the most recent game. He only ran routes on four plays. He only ran 4 routes, 12% route participation in week 12 for Lawrence Cager. So that's kind of thin to me. Looking at the Dolphins guys over the past couple of games. So Durham Smythe is interesting. Still 50% route participation over the past 2 games. He's no longer playing 100% of snaps like he was earlier in the year, but 3 targets over the past 2 games. That's another way you can get a little bit unique if you want to play a Miami stack. Just go to Durham Smythe in there. Julian Hill, just 5 routes run. Yeah, it really is. It's hard to find. I'm really struggling. I want to find a tight end that I can make a case for who is really cheap, and it's difficult on this slate. Just none of them look all that great to me. So, yeah, maybe I will just stick with the popular guys, which I hate to do on a slate this size, but that might just be the correct approach here. Durham Smythe, I think, is going to be in my player pool at the very least. What about? Let me look at Ben Sims. Actually, I haven't looked at the Packers tight ends. Has he played enough to warrant some consideration?
Yeah, I wouldn't waste your time.
Yeah, 10 routes run over the past 2 games. Nothing promising there. Yeah, honestly, I hate it. I hate that I can't just like play one of these ugly tight ends and hope for a red zone target and a touchdown. But these guys they are really thin on this slate. So yeah, Chig, Tucker Kraft, Daniel Bellinger. I think those are the guys that I'm most interested. I'm going to play a little bit of Durham Smythe also.
All right. By the way, we have a real sweat. 15 likes to 500.
Wow.
It's happening again.
Us.
Yo, the boys rallied hard. They just rallied hard. And as a result, let's show some Sims results up here for the 1,600 of you guys still with us. And I know you guys ask all the time. So I also had Mike producing the show, run the FanDuel Sims as well. If you're wondering if this tool works, Eitan Chandler, who does a lot of betting stuff for us. If you're a Philly guy, you know Eitan, right? Or you're on our Odd Shopper channel. He called himself like a self-proclaimed non-sharp for DFS. He bets. He does betting. He plugged some lineups into the sim for the showdown slate on Thursday night. And what happened? He won like $5,600 on $100 in entries. He's like, I touched nothing. I just clicked the button, ran it, threw the lineups in the 20 max, and binked it and shipped for tied for first, took down 5,600. So here's what I'd say. We're coming up on lock. The link's in the description and in chat. If nothing else, click it, explore it while you're watching football. Sit there with your laptop or your phone and check out the tools that we have to offer, whether it's the lineup generator or the Sims package, which is literally every tool on the site, including the lineup generator, including the premium Discord, ownership, top stacks, contest generator, lineup simulator. You don't need an optimizer anymore. You don't need any of that. Everything you need to build winning lineups is right in front of your face. Link in the description and in chat if you want to make that happen. And I will say, we crushed 500. Oh my God, 573.
Wow. Was there a lag or something? That would happen quickly.
Yeah, the people rallied. They make me sweat on purpose.
Holding out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They just want you to admit defeat. And then they're like, all right, we're going to give it to you now after you admit defeat.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys. Let's pull up the Sims and see what we got here. So first things first, we did 25% payout. Maybe you guys, if you like some of these lineups, you still have time to plug away. All it's doing is the contest generator is essentially generating the contest with what it expects the lineups to look like in the field, right? And then it's simming this tens of thousands of times and spitting out the lineups that have the highest simmed ROI that, are going to be unique. You see the top 10 percentage, cash percentage, win probability, but simmed ROI is the most important here. So you'll see some odd lineups, right? But that's because those are the lineups that are not as likely to win but when they win, they're winning everything. You know what I mean, Neil? I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. And those are, I mean, that's exactly how I play these short slates. Is I play lineups that are, they look kind of ugly, and then you just kind of hope that things go a little bit weird, and then you win a ton of money if it happens to work out.
So it looks like FanDuel, a lot of the lineups that we have up top are actually DeVito lineups, which is interesting. 429 simmed ROI, which is crazy. So it's Barkley, HN, Hill, Waddle. Oh my God. Dobbs, Chig, Kraft, Packers, DeVito, Barkley, HN, Hill, Waddle, Wicks, Kraft. So it's basically just Miami onslaughts with cheap quarterbacks. What's the first Tua line? Okay, so here's your first Tua lineup on FanDuel, the highest sim. Tua, Barkley, HN, Hill, Robinson, Wicks, Okongwu. That's a nice looking lineup. That's a real nice lineup.
For sure.
I'm not surprised it's duped once in the 10,000 run in the contest sim, or generator, but it's a nice lineup. Mike, do me a favor. Go to DraftKings for a second. Did you run the DraftKings one?
Yep. This is.
Oh, okay. Thanks. You're just switching over. Got you. And go to exposures here. Because I want to see what quarterback exposures look like on DraftKings. You think we're still going to get a lot of Tommy D?
Probably. I don't know. He didn't look great in the tools.
Well, you know what it is? We're getting a few Tommy D, like the Hyatt. You ever see this with the Sims? It definitely happens where, okay, 30%, but where you don't get a ton of a guy, but some of the highest sim lineups have them, even though you don't have a lot of them.
Yeah. I mean, they don't project all that well. They're not going to make it into a ton, but like they have those outlier games where they crush, and then those are the best lineups in the Sims. Yeah.
Mike, can you go to running backs?
Sure.
I go to exposure on running backs. I assume it's going to be a lot of HN, a lot of Barkley, probably less Mostert. I boosted Mostert a little bit personally.
Yeah. I like Mostert tonight.
Yeah, see, we don't have a ton of Mostert. A lot of Barkley, a lot of Dillon, HN, Henry. And then go to lineups, Mike. Let's give the people a little glimpse into what we're looking at here on the lineup generator because, or I'm sorry, on the contest simulator. All right. Favorite, there's one. Okay, so dude, the top 3 are DeVito lineups.
Seriously?
Yeah.
And you know, this is smarter than me. Like these, you should be trusting that more than you trust what we're doing. So I'm like, man, maybe I should have played a little bit of DeVito.
And not stacked with the Giants receiver, stacked with Barkley instead on all 3.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. Barkley, actually, I believe Barkley does have 1 or 2 receiving touchdowns just since Tommy DeVito took over.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that at all. I think that was even in the Daniel Jones days, I believe there was a slate because I think I sort of recommended, I was thinking about doing it and then didn't do it, where Daniel Jones and Barkley was the stack he needed.
Wow. Okay. All right. One more thing, Mike.
Shoot.
Go to cash percentage and sort by that. You know, Neil, it's interesting to see which ones of these are going to be maybe a little bit chalkier.
Yeah.
Family, no names.
It is a Tua, Barkley, Dillon, Hill, Waddle. Yeah. Wicks, Chig, Kraft, Dolphins. 30 dupes when we ran it.
That's a lot of dupes in a $10,000 sim. That's a ton of dupes.
All of the highest cash probabilities have Tua. Go to win probability. Go to win percentage, Mike. I bet there's a lot of DeVito. Maybe not.
More love.
Okay. Mostly 2 of those still.
Yeah, that's the first DeVito.
Mike, or Neil, before we go, any thoughts on just unique builds here? Any final thoughts before we get out of here? We still have a couple minutes to go.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up at the top of the show. I think that it is kind of unique to just go full onslaught with one team. I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. I could be wrong. Like the Dolphins are going to be so popular that maybe it won't be as unique as I think it will be to start with, like Hill, Waddle, Mostert, Achane, Tua, and the Dolphins defense. Maybe that'll be more popular than I'm assuming it is, but I think it's likely to be somewhat unique on this slate. So I think that's one way to get unique. I think leaving some salary on the table, that's something I've been kind of wrestling with a little bit, Lofty, is how much salary I need. And I think I need to do a little bit of a study on what pros are generally doing, like the top players in the game. Are they leaving salary on a 2-game slate? Because it's something that I've kind of thought about for a while. I obviously do it for Showdown. I think that it's something that I should be probably doing on these 2-game slates. So that's another way to get unique, is just leave a little bit more salary on the table. 2 running backs from the same team. I also I allowed several players against my defense. Actually, earlier today, I think the first lineup I looked at in the lineup generator today had full on like 5 Dolphins, Tua, 5 Dolphins in it, and then the Titans defense. I think that is one thing that not a lot of people will do, and we do it on Showdown. I think it's viable on a 2-game slate also. So a lot of ways to get you unique on this slate.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, Clayton said biggest mistake you can make is tweaking the Sims lineup. Took me weeks to stop. He's talking about running the Sims and then tweaking them. Yeah, it'll get you into trouble. Someone asked what he meant by that. Yeah, like if you're using the Sims, it's not saying don't ever do ROI boosts or do manual or like custom projections. Not like, because custom projections are just totally different, right? But if you're taking a lineup and then you're tweaking like a 2v2, it's not going to be as quality a lineup anymore. You might think it is, but the whole reason that it's popping as like one of the higher sim lineups is because it's that lineup.
Exactly. They're balanced in a way that like our brains can't compute like exactly how chalky should this lineup be? What kind of projection versus ownership are we looking for? The Sims balance all of that out for you. So yeah, you don't want to, screw with it too much, but I do think that it is viable to, like, if you're getting to 100% Tyreek Hill, you don't want that, neg boost Hill just to get to more lineups that like the top ROI lineups then that don't have Hill, make it into your pool also. You can make little adjustments to players to adjust how much you're getting of them, but you still don't want to mess around with it too much, because then you might end up like, if you mess around with it too much, you might end up with lineups that originally showed out as negative EV popping all the way into your lineups if you screw around too much. So you can definitely, customize it, adjust things as you like, but don't go too crazy there.
Well, you guys are the best. Glad to be back. Let's have ourselves a night, and we will see you back here for the next one on the Showdown Strategy Show next time we see you. Thanks to Mike. Mike produced like 100 shows today, so shout out to Mike behind the scenes. Follow Neil at PlayerQDFS. I'm at Lofty_D. DMs are always open if you guys ever have any questions, just so you know. And if you've DM'd me before with any questions, whatever, concern, I'll always get back to you. So, hey, good luck. Let's have some fun tonight, and we'll catch you back here on, what day is it today? Monday? Thursday night football. Peace.